When someone asks her where she's from, there's a split second before she answers, not because she doesn't know, but because the answer is more complicated than many people realize. In this episode, I'm continuing to explore one of the most loaded questions in professional life. 4 words that can open a door or close one depending on how, when, and why you ask them. I started this conversation in episode 1 of season 2, and today I'm going deeper through the lens of someone who has navigated this question in 2 countries for decades. Welcome to Boosted, from unpolished to promoted. I'm Trina Booz, founder and CEO of Boost Academy of Excellence. As a former recruitment agency CEO who placed thousands of professionals, I now train emerging leaders on the workplace skills that actually get you promoted. In each episode, you'll get actionable tips to build your professional presence and advance your career through real workplace scenarios and human stories. We'll cover the unwritten rules of professional success that nobody teaches you in school. Are you ready to boost your professional game? Let's dive in. Today's guest is a Hong Kong-born immigrant, leadership coach, and international best-selling author. She's the founder of Innovate You, an ICF professional certified coach, a Fascinate certified advisor, and has over 2 decades of experience in the technology sector. Her work focuses on empowering women in STEM to strengthen their executive presence, lead with authenticity, and build teams that are future ready. In 2024, she released her book, Evolution of Leadership in STEM, Women Catalyzing Change, which became an international bestseller. Amy Au, welcome to Boosted.
Hi, Trina. So happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me over.
So excited to have our conversation today. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey to Canada.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. As you've mentioned, I grew up in Hong Kong and I came to Canada when I was a teenager. So I came here to study at first, but the very first year in Canada, I just fell in love with this country, with the people here. So I decided that I wanted to stay. So I went through university and got into the technology space and started my career here pretty much right after I graduated. Here I am. So I love this country and love being here. I built my family here and my life and having great friendships that I've developed since then. But I still went back and visited Hong Kong many times. I still have friends, I have relatives there. It's just a different place where I wanted to live. It's my choice of how I wanted to spend the rest of my life, and here I am.
When you and I chatted previously, you had said that you felt connected to Canada almost immediately. And I know
Mhm.
speaking to a lot of immigrants, they describe sometimes the opposite of that experience. So why was that your experience when coming to Canada?
I guess because I was younger as well. So the first experience I had of meeting more people was at the school. And I was lucky to meet people that were very inclusive. They were very welcoming, including like friends that I first made at high school and also with the teacher. They were very welcoming. And even though in my school back then, there were not too many immigrants. And I mentioned to you earlier that when I first arrived at the school, the first few weeks, I felt like everybody was asking me to repeat myself every time, almost every time when I spoke. But it wasn't because I wasn't speaking English, but it was because I had an accent. I'm sure that I still have an accent. As I always say, like everybody has an accent. But what I had then was more of a British accent.
Mhm.
And at first, I felt a little bit like annoyed, and I didn't know why. And I realized that wasn't because I wasn't speaking English. It was because of the accent was harder for them to understand. So I slowly kind of help myself to learn a bit of the way that Canadians speak English. But there are words that I would never be able to change. Like it's just how I grew up, like, and that's how I would continue to speak with some British accent.
It
Mhm.
reminds me of when I came to Canada. So I lived in Trinidad and then Scotland
Oh,
and then came to Canada. So I had
right.
multiple different experiences having these different accents. And it was in
Mhm.
Canada where I felt people were always saying, "Oh, can you say that again?" And they were curious, but I remember feeling like I was being judged. And I remember as a
Mm,
child, I was 9, and I remember trying
right.
so hard to get rid of my Scottish accent. And I used to say words like, when instead of cut your bangs, we say cut your bangs in Canada, it's your
Yeah.
fringe and trousers and
Right.
different things like that.
Yes.
And I just remember I lost my accent in about 3 months. I was fully speaking with
Mhm.
a Canadian accent. And
Right.
yeah, I regret that, like as a kid, you want to fit in, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But like that's what I thought it as well, right? Like I thought, oh, like do I want to change it just because that I wanted to blend in. I don't want people to see me as like an immigrant or someone that who wasn't born here. But
Mhm.
I guess I was older comparing to like if you were 9, I was like already like in teenage years, and I thought, no, like I think the key is that people needs to understand what I speak so we can communicate. So I thought
Mhm.
changing that is okay, and as long as people understand me. But I said like there's some words I cannot. Like I would say dance. Like I don't dance. Like it's something
Uh-huh.
that is very hard for me to have to think hard on when I say I dance, like so then people can understand what I'm saying. But I'm like, I dance. That's how
Yes.
naturally I would be
Yeah, yeah.
saying it, right?
We still say auntie and uncle.
Yeah,
Auntie. And it was actually one of our mutual friends, Hilda, who kind of giggled when I said auntie, and
yeah,
she was like, "Oh, that's what you say." I can't help it. So, I mean, we know there's a real difference between Hong Kong and mainland China, politically, culturally, historically. So, when people collapse that distinction,
Mhm.
what do you want them to know that they've missed?
So maybe a little bit of background. I left before the change back of Hong Kong to China, right? So the historical reference to that is that there was 100 years that Hong Kong was under the British government as a colony, right? And I already left Hong Kong before 1997. So Hong Kong is part of China, and it has always been, right? So
Mhm.
is important to say that yes, I'm from Hong Kong, China. That's correct. It's totally correct to say so. Somebody who was brought up and like lived there for years and born there in Hong Kong has a cultural difference from people that's from different parts of China. That there is a distinction from how I was brought up, how I was influenced by the culture in that place, and which is a very rich mix of Western and Eastern culture in
Mhm.
one small place,
Mhm.
and that's how I see my identity as like from that place.
So when someone then asks you, "Where are you from?" and people in Canada ask you that, what goes through your mind in that split second before you answer?
It depends on how that question was asked, right? Because you can tell from people how they ask that questions what that intention is. Some
Mhm.
people are truly curious, but there were times that I had people ask that I felt like, is it because you don't understand what I'm talking about? Like, is it my accent was coming out again? Like that
Mhm.
you can tell that I'm not born here. So in that split second, I felt judged, right? Like that felt people like, are you accepting me as a Canadian or you're not? It was more when I was traveling in different countries and people get to ask you this question because like it's just natural. My first reaction and always is my answer is I'm from Canada.
Mhm.
And then there's some of them might say, oh, you're from Canada. Then that responds to something that you don't look like a Canadian. That's what they assume a Canadian should look like.
Now, have you ever been asked the question, yeah, but where are you really from? And how does that land for you?
A few times. Some people's like, they don't believe it. Like that look gave you that hint of they don't believe that you're from Canada. Like,
Hmm.
how? Right? Or they might have an assumption. They would say, are you Japanese? Or are you Korean? Where are
Yeah.
you from? Right? And so when that they have the assumption, I felt like I have the obligation to correct them, to tell me my roots. I'm Chinese. I'm proud being a Chinese. Like, but I'm also Canadian. But when the question, the second prompt, I was like, are you really like from Canada? Like, and that look gave me, I was like, oh, you're not. Like, you're not
Hmm.
from there. Like, you don't, almost like you don't belong there, right? And that's where it hurts, right? Because I've been in Canada for many, many years, and I'm proud to call myself Canadian. And why would you judge to say that I don't belong or I should have another identity? It's different when people ask, "Oh, well, what is your ethnic background?" That I can understand. That they wanted to know your roots. Mm,
So, in a lot of workplaces, especially I think larger corporations, there's a policy where they'll say not to ask that question, right? I've
mm,
spoken to a lot of people in DEI.
mm,
I've spoken to like just leaders of various organizations. I've spoken to
mm,
a protocol officer. I've spoken
mm,
to, oh goodness, like etiquette experts, and they all say the same thing. And I so strongly, I understand, but I don't agree that it's this yes or no sort of thing.
mm,
And so for you, can you understand
mm,
why in a corporate setting people are advised not to ask that question?
mm. Right. I think especially in the Canada environment where we are very multicultural, and the company I worked for before as well is a global company. So we do have a lot of colleagues that's from all over the place, right? Like it's from every part of the globe. And it's natural to understand that we all have a different background. And not to ask that question is not to have the judgment on whether that because you're from one part of the country or one part of the world that you do or do not belong here, right? And so I understand that part. But at the same time, that we might have lost some of that connections because that we were too politically correct and trying not to ask too much about like your background, and that we lose the chance of learning more about the person who could have, like as you mentioned, you live in different parts of the world, you have the culture rich background from
Hmm.
many different nations, and that identity that you have is so rich, and it could be really beneficial to for people to know about. And if you didn't know that, you might not be able to ask. Like perhaps I wouldn't have known if you didn't tell me you were from Trinidad, right? So be open and be able to ask the questions without the judgment behind or
Yeah.
assumption behind is crucial.
And I will say the amount of incredible stories and
Mm,
things that I have learned just doing this season of this episode. You are my third interview addressing this
mm,
question. And oh my goodness, the richness, the conversations that have come out of this question. And I have taken
mhm,
these stories and I've shared them with other people in different meetings, and people are learning. People, not
mm,
just me, but I'm sharing people's stories, and it's just the richness that can come from it if the intent
mhm,
is good. But I think there's this need to not just assume the worst either, which is kind of why in my framework, my grace framework, I not just addressed how to ask this question or if you should ask, but I also addressed how to receive this question gracefully. And so that was a big part of it too. And so, you know, in my keynote where I did address this question, where are you from? I created this grace framework, and it's really the foundation of the keynote, and it gives them a guide, gives people that guide to just know how to ask, whether to ask, and how to receive it. So my question for you is, you've heard the talk, you've seen the framework. As someone who has lived on the receiving end of this question in 2 different countries with a background that most people probably can't place very easily, then how did that land for you, and what didn't?
I think it's you have hit the nail on the head, right? That how the intention is crucial, and you have to ask a question with the genuine curiosity. If you were asking it in a way that you just wanted to confirm whether your assumption is correct, is instead of coming across as you wanted to learn more about this person, that's not the good intent, right? But if you're asking it with that genuine curiosity that you want to learn more about that person, you felt that you can connect with this person more if you ask that question. That is crucial. And I love the way that you put it as the timing. You don't ask that question when you just first met the person at a networking event. The very get-go of like, once you know the person's name, and then you know, oh, where are you from? Right? That might not be the best timing. But after, a few minutes of exchange, of talking more, you get to know the person more, then it might be okay to ask because you're curious. You wanted to learn more about this person. It's two ways, right? Grace is like how you present yourself gracefully and you ask that question, but also how do you receive that question gracefully? So reframing that question in my mind, right, is the change or the mindset reframe is crucial as well.
Yeah.
I believe that I have changed over time. Like, and when I was younger, that is very easy for me to jump into conclusions like, well, this person asking must be because that they heard me with an accent, that I probably not from here, right? I probably wasn't born here. But now then, so maybe the person is curious to learn more about me, and I'm okay to share my background. And I have a lot to talk about. I'm okay to share if I wanted to. I can decide whether I wanted to share a little or wanted to share more depending on like how connected I felt with that person.
Yes. And for context for the listeners and viewers, the GRACE framework, it's something I've been referencing in the past few episodes. So maybe I will link to it in the description or show notes. So you and our friend Hilda have formed this wonderful group of colleagues that network regularly, and you do some very interesting cultural experiences as part of how you network. Can you share a little bit about what inspired that and what this group is all about? One of the experiences you recently had was a beautiful dim sum dinner, and then there was like a Korean dancing class. So please share.
Yeah, for sure. Hilda and I are great friends. We used to dance together. We did ballet together. And I think that we have something in common is that we both enjoy knowing people, get to know people. And so sometimes when we go to networking events, that we thought, yeah, there's like big crowds, like there are a lot of people. Yes, you might get to talk to a few people and you really can get connected with just a few out of like 100 or 500 people in that event. So we both felt that in order to really get to know people, you need to curate a space and experience that people feel included. So that's why we started thinking, you know what, like, what if we invite with intention, with people that we wanted to be coming together and the purely just wanted to get to know each other. It's not so much about like networking for business advantage. It's just purely as human to human. And the first one we did was the 52 women who transformed Toronto. And so that's how we started. And when we felt that it was really a way to bring women together, and which we need stronger bonds. I mentioned about dance that we came from a dance background together, and one of the members in our initial group was Korean, and through chatting with her, and thought like, what if like we do something more with the cultural base and let's do that. And then we tried it out, and it was a lot of fun. I did not know about Korean dance before. I only watched them like on stages, and I felt the color, the movements as really interesting. And now I get to learn a little bit more from professional dancers.
Yeah.
And so that's how it began.
It is intentional, as you said. It is rich. We're learning so much about each other in these events that you very carefully curate. It is so smart because it's very accomplished women that are in business doing wonderful things. And by nature of being together, you get to know each other in this very social environment where you're learning about each other's cultures and you're supporting each other. And so I want to just commend you for doing that. It's really wonderful to see people being intentional about creating community. So thank you for that. And I just love this cultural slant that you've put into it. And yeah, I mean, what I just love about your story is that you've never made this question the enemy the way that some have. You've made it sort of an invitation, and I think that that is a gift for everyone on both sides of that question. And I just want to thank you so much for being open with your experience today, and for sharing a little bit about your background.
Thank you so much for having me, Trina. Really enjoyed this conversation. And you are part of our group as well. I just love the way that you like to connect and creating that really a safe space for conversation. And the way that you have brought us together also through the podcast and it's really intentional as well. I love those questions that you ask. It's curious at the same time as I wanted to learn more.
Thank you. And where can our listeners who want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Mhm. I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. You can look up Amy Au and PCC. I think that's the way, that's the easier way to find me. Or send me an email, amy at innovateyou.ca. So my website is innovateyou.ca. You can find me there as well.
Wonderful. Well, Amy, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. And I look forward to joining you at one of your superb networking events. I think there's like a lavender field and then there was a boat cruise. So at one of these, I hope to meet you again in person.
Excellent. Thank you so much.